typically will wait a second, just one second. I got to get this Facebook Live. Okay. Well, welcome to another WCM Fireside Chats. This week we've got three guests on. We're going to be talking about wildfires. Which is just impacting the western states so much. Oregon, California, Washington. I know Colorado has had some. I think I was reading last week, Idaho has a few. And it's just, I was reading today, I think they said over 3.7 million acres in California since the beginning of the year, which is just insane to think about how much land that is. And so I think we're going to be talking about wildfires and the impact it's been having on the RV park and campground sectors. Maybe we can just go around and you guys can introduce yourself. We'll start with Erin. I guess just tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've owned your park.
Hi, my name's Erin Thiem. I co-own the Inn Town Campground in Nevada City, California with my husband, Dan. And we built our campground from the ground up. We've been open for business just over 4 years. And we are in the foothills of Northern California and very much impacted by the wildfires. Not necessarily that our town is on fire, but the greater population and the impact on the business and the air quality and the customers. So I have a few things to share on the subject, yeah.
Yeah. Julie, I guess tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hey, I'm Julie Pimentel, and I'm the managing partner of Celeste, Daniels Advertising and Design. And we have represented 2 resorts for about 15 years. The first one is Yosemite Pines RV Resort and Family Lodging, which is located 22 miles from the western gate of Yosemite. They have definitely been impacted by the fires. And then Loon Lake Lodge and RV Resort, which is in the central Oregon coast, about maybe 25 miles from Reedsport. They have not been evacuated, but they've definitely been affected. We have over 1 million acres burning in Oregon right now. And we're obviously a very small state, so it's been very, very difficult.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah. And then Darrell, I think a lot of people probably know you from, I see you at conferences all the time, and then your work with CampCalNOW. Just tell us a little bit about what you do at your park.
Well, I work at Pismo Coast Village RV Resort in Pismo Beach. We have been open for 45 years. I've been here for 27 of those years. Run the front office. I also have been involved with our state RV association and done a few things at the national level as well. Fortunately, we here haven't been directly impacted by the fires, but we definitely have had some smoke wander over from some of the other fires around the state, which is almost the entire state of California, it seems like right now.
I live out in the Midwest, so I think I just kind of wanted to start a little bit. Maybe you guys could give me a picture of what it's like to live in a state with these wildfires. I mean, because, I live in southern Michigan, and we just don't have any wildfires. We might get a field fire every once in a while, but nothing like a wildfire. So just kind of give us a picture about what you're experiencing. And, I don't know if any of you have been evacuated this year, but like if you have in previous years or anything, maybe you can just mention, what that process is like too.
Yeah. I can certainly start. In our small community, we did have a fire about 10 miles from our campground last month, and it evacuated a good percentage of our community. The fire department in Cal Fire was very conservative about how much they wanted to get people out. So neither our house or our businesses, we also own a motel, were evacuated. And as a result, we became a location for people in our community that had been evacuated. So it's a really interesting mix of having customers who are on vacation, people who are being evacuated, and then customers who are canceling because of the fires. So that's unfortunately a reality in our world at the moment. In the last month, the air quality has been super variable. The winds shift. I told Ben earlier that it's not really how it is in the land of days. It can sometimes be the hours, like, oh, it's fine. I feel like our community has gotten really good at reading the air index. And so that's a good way to monitor whether or not it's a day where you're good for going outside or a day for maybe doing more activities inside.
Yeah, yeah. Darrell, I think you mentioned to me, you said that right now it's nice for the last couple of weeks, but you did have some times where the smoke was just horrible, I guess.
Yeah, generally our air quality here is really, really good. We have, we're right on the California coast, so we get those winds that tend to blow in nice, clean, fresh air. It's a great place to live. But once in a while, the winds will shift and go a different direction. And we had about a 2-week stretch where we had a pretty good, solid smoke layer, which was interesting. You could actually walk outside and taste it. We kind of faced a little challenge between keeping our doors and windows open in our offices for COVID airflow and combating that versus having to close them back up to keep the smoke out. And for folks who have some breathing issues, it was a coin toss which way we went with that. So that was an interesting little thing that we hadn't expected to deal with.
Yeah, and Julie, you live in Oregon. I guess, what's the air quality been like where you live, and then what are your parks that you represent saying about what they're experiencing?
So Oregon has, we still have quite a few fires that are burning, and the one that is closest to us is actually, we're in Eugene. It's on the west side. This was a fire on the east side along the Mackenzie River. Very, very beautiful area of Oregon. And the people were evacuated from the area very quickly. And so the air quality here, it's probably 30 miles from where I am right now. And so we could not go outside for 10 days. The ash was very, very heavy where we are. And we just stayed inside. And they requested that it was, Oregon had the worst air quality in the world for several days, which is not something we're really excited or proud of. The resort is about driving time about 2 hours from where we are, and they are the lake, Loon Lake Lodge. It's on a lake that is surrounded entirely by Douglas fir trees. It's an extraordinarily gorgeous lake. However, because it is entirely surrounded by trees, of course, they are vulnerable to forest fire. The closest one only impacted them intermittently with smoke. They didn't have the same kind of heavy smoke that we had here in Eugene. Yosemite Pines, 22 miles from the western gate of Yosemite, had to evacuate. They evacuated on August 20th. And it's a large park. However, because of COVID, it really can only be at 50% maximum, but they have over 200 sites and cabins. So they were totally full. I don't know if that means that they had 100 people there. I mean, I'm not at the property. It's obviously, I don't know if they had 100 people there, but it could have been more depending on how they had to block it out for COVID. They totally evacuated. And in a matter of hours, they not only had to evacuate the people, but they also have a petting farm, and they have alpacas and donkeys and goats and chickens and rabbits. And so that was actually one of the most difficult things. Was I guess that the evacuation with all the guests went very well, but then they were there, the staff was there, like, now what do we do with the animals? And fortunately, I mean, they seriously stayed, even though the fire was like not very far away, maybe 3 miles. Eventually, the sheriff's department did come and take the animals away and brought them to a shelter. So that's something to think about, is not only you have to look at all the aspects of what needs to be done if you have to quickly evacuate.
Yeah. I mean, if you have animals at the park, obviously they got to get out too. So that can be just another challenge, I guess. On the air quality side, so like Darrell, I guess where you're at, so is the air quality still pretty poor, even though it's not as bad, or is it just, is it pretty clear now?
We're definitely back to our normal good range. There's a couple of days that have been in the moderate, just barely. But we've been pretty stable and good for, like I said, about getting close to 2 weeks now.
Okay.
We haven't had quite as long a window of clean air, but it's, as I said, the air index, we've been in the green, so we celebrate. If you can get back in the green, you're happy. So the air quality at the moment is great, and we're hopeful that it will stay that way, but who knows?
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, it just really depends on the way the wind blows, I guess, for some of these parks. You know, and I guess that's a challenge, I guess, Erin. I guess, what do you do? Like, how do you market your park when you're, you know, beholden to wind? I guess, you know, what do you tell guests who are looking at your park, as far as you can only probably give them what it is, what it's like right now, right? You can't guarantee like what the future will be like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that being in Northern California and the reality of fire season, and obviously this year it's going to be so much longer than the land of normal, but I'm constantly surprised by the people who have varying health issues and whatnot, who choose to travel and then choose to not pay attention to the cancellation window and then get very upset. So I can include a link in the chat for this, or send you an email. We did write an article for RVing website to give sort of some tips to people for more the consumer end, for how to RV travel in the fire season, because we've had so many challenges with customers who really don't quite understand that the level of personal responsibility that they need. But on the flip side, I do feel like, even though, because we have been open and serving our customers, even when the air quality is not so great, we've had customers travel with air purifiers and they just plug them in. Like, we have glamping tents, and so actually more than one guest came, they're like, we just zipped up all the windows, it has power in the tent, they plugged it in, they ran the air filter, and they went to bed, and they just sort of, and then I had another tent camper who slept with her N95 mask on because camping was more important than staying home. I've had a lot of families that are just like having a really hard time with distance learning, and they're like, the air is bad at home, I might as well leave, I need some sanity, I need some to get out of our four walls. So it's very much not a one-size-fits-all model. I recognize that we all have unique needs, and my advice to the consumers is always like, do what's best for you. If you can't take that unknown variability, don't book or cancel ahead of time. But and then for other campgrounds, I really would say that it would be great if we were super consistent, because it's really hard when the camper is like, well, so-and-so gave me all my money back because I changed my mind on the day of or the day after. So that's difficult when we're a small business, and we're still open and serving the customers. And we recognize that people have different perspectives, different needs, different wants, different situations. And it's not our place to say, you can't come camping because we say so.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, do you guys put, you know, disclaimers on your website, like when they go to book, hey, this is wildfire season, or this is what the air quality is like?
No, because the air quality, I mean, I can't say that in the land of like, if you book today for tomorrow, or you book today, or you booked in January for tomorrow. But we do include in our reservations that our cancellation policies are not dependent on weather. And that includes heat, because we can get to be 100 degrees in the summer, and smoke, and rain. Like, if it's raining and you don't want to come, that is actually your choice, and we're happy to honor your reservation. And unfortunately, wildfire season does exacerbate that particular issue, and it's partially the variability, NPs. But I mean, in the land of, if we said yes to the people who chose not to come at the last minute, I really honestly don't think we could stay in business. Like, it has been that problematic for the volume of people who have chosen to change their plans on the day of or the day before. And so what we've decided is to be consistent, because it's the reason that we have the policy is that the people who are coming from other areas, or like the person who was being evacuated, who came camping with us because it was a safe place to come stay. So we're treating all of our customers equally, and recognizing that it's challenging. And anyways, it's been hard.
Yeah. I guess, Darrell, what's that been like at your park? I guess, I know you're doing better now. I guess, what was it like during the really bad period a couple weeks ago?
We were, as usual, 100% full. You know, we saw some cancellations for, you know, we need to stay home because we may be getting evacuated. The fire's getting close. We picked up new reservations because they were in an area where the smoke was so bad they needed to get out, and get someplace with some clean air they could breathe. We picked up reservations from other parks who were evacuated and closed down, and people had nowhere else to go, so they came here. We really saw, I mean, across the board, we saw cancellations, we saw new reservations, and every spot we canceled, somebody 5 minutes later booked it. So we were in a lot better, more fortunate shape than a lot of other parks around the state. We've been very blessed this year.
Yeah, I guess, what's the makeup? So are you guys, Erin and Darrell, are you guys seeing a lot of just California people, like local people coming to your parks, or are you seeing a lot of people from other states coming, or is it a mix?
Most of our customers come from fairly close, so it's not, I mean, occasionally, I mean, we get people from Reno because that's just up and over the summit, but generally, and we do get people from Oregon, but I would say generally speaking, most of our customers are from California. And I mean, in the land of normal, we do have international customers. Well, they all canceled because of COVID. So
Yeah.
Our reservations that we have are generally speaking within like a 10-minute to 3-hour driving radius. So
So you would think that they would be aware of the conditions, I guess, especially if you're within like 2 to 3 hours.
yeah. But the air quality can vary so drastically between those places. So that's definitely something that people have had that like, well, it could be better, it could be worse. So yeah.
I guess, Julie, what do you do for the parks you represent? I guess, what are they doing? Are they, as far as do they let people know that could be issues with smoke, or, are they seeing a lot of cancellations?
They've had a lot of cancellations, and of course, the one in Yosemite, there's broad national publicity about what's going on in Yosemite, and Yosemite was closed, just reopened on Friday. So some people will come anyway because they are far enough away from the park, and there's lots and lots of other things to do besides go to Yosemite National Park. But there have been a lot of cancellations. They have been very good about moving people. If they call and say we are canceling, they will move them, encourage them to move to a different date. When they were evacuated, probably the most difficult thing, of course, is that they did have to give refunds to everybody because they were closed. Yeah. So, and then of course, on top of COVID, that was not easy. And I think that one of the things is that, like you said, is that some people they just don't look into, and one person, we sent out, our agency that night after hours, sent out an email to everybody who had reservations for the next 2 or 3 days, not knowing how long they were going to be closed. And we still had people who were very upset because they didn't get the email. They felt that they should have been personally called to say we're evacuated. Of course, the people who were on staff also live in Groveland, so they were themselves also evacuated. And I mean, how are you going to call all those people? There was 115 reservations. How are you going to call all those people and evacuate? So I think that's something that, like Erin said, if we had some kind of policy that we could use to help people to understand, check your email before you go somewhere, or check the weather report. Oregon, there's been a lot of cancellations also because of the weather. But also there's been a lot of people, the same thing is that they know that the lake is somewhat protected from the weather because of they're in the mountains. And so like this last weekend, there were people there who went there because they wanted to get away, and they were homeschooling or doing their online schooling in the lobby of the lodge with their kids. So it's a big, and it's the same policy. It's your choice to come or not come. The weather and the smoke changes by the hour. Mm-hmm. So that's the message I think we need to try to help people understand, is that it changes. Check in before you drive. This man had driven 7 hours and hadn't looked at his emails, so he was not happy, but I'm not sure what else we could have done.
Yeah. I mean, there's sometimes there has to be a little bit of personal responsibility on the camper, as far as, understanding what they're reserving and understanding where they're going, I guess. and keeping an eye on the weather. You know, I always try to keep an eye out to see whether it's going to rain before I go tent camping, because I don't want to get stuck tent camping with my in a downpour. So I guess you know, we've had the COVID crisis this year, and I think, you know, give me maybe a little bit of a picture of what it was like in California as far as being able to reopen for COVID. And then I think I spoke with Diana Kelly from CampCalNOW last week, and she said that, you know, things were going pretty good after the parks were allowed to open, and then the wildfire season came and it kind of slowed things down again. I guess, are you guys staying pretty full when the smoke's not, you know, impacting your park?
I can speak to that. We reopened for business in mid-June after being closed for 3 months, and that was great to be able to welcome back our customers. Summer is definitely our high season. It was very busy. We don't normally run on 100% occupancy like Darrell. So it was 0 to 100 while being understaffed. So that had its challenges. And then we definitely had impacts from the fires and from the air quality. One of the main attractions in our community is a local river, and it's a great time to go late August, beginning of September, and the air quality has been such that like a lot of people chose not to do that outdoor activity. And I would say we were not as fortunate to just cancel and rebook. So our occupancy has definitely suffered as a result of the poor air quality. This weekend was probably the first weekend in a month that we've had great air all weekend long and full of happy campers, so we're excited to be outside. But I would say that the taxing of COVID and super busy, and then a month of bad air and all of those challenges. And then I didn't mention, but we also are in the land of what PG&E, which is our utility company, called PSPS. And so there are parts of my community today that have no power because of a wind event. And so the schools are all like, we don't know if we'll have power. We don't know if it'll go off. We don't know if it'll come back on. So that is also another impact on business. I mean, a campground is not the biggest issue without any power, but the uncertainty of all of those pieces together is definitely taking a toll, and it's been difficult. So
Yeah, I get you know, the power is another thing. So are they still doing like rolling power outages in California?
Yosemite, after that was the other thing, is once they got back after the evacuation, then they turned the power off for about 4 days. So and people still came, even though they, you know, and they didn't have power. But yes, it's very difficult to also have that as an element of uncertainty.
You know, is there any chance? I know the power companies are saying that they're doing it to prevent more wildfires, or, you know, I guess. What's the future look like as far as preventing these wildfires? Do you guys have any like ideas as to, you know, what needs to happen, I guess, to stop all these wildfires?
So I have a friend who, I think out of the 5 or 6 siblings, 3 of them are firefighters, and they put, and one of them is the manager of the fire. I'm not exactly sure what his fire is, but like he's the head honcho at Kings Canyon National Park. And he put a big post, the family put a big post on, they've been doing this for like 35 years, firefighters, hotshots, really the elite firefighters. And they put a post on Facebook yesterday, which says that this is the worst that they've ever seen. They believe that it's due to climate change, and that it's actually very unbelievable. They have the same kind of stories of things that people do that they shouldn't be doing. You know, they evacuate them and then they go back in and they have to evacuate them again. So a lot of it, I think, is somehow helping people to have common sense. I think it's very necessary to turn the power off. When you live in the forest, like I do, and there's winds, and you hear the branches breaking and the trees falling over, and you are hoping that it's not going to fall on a power line, and start a fire outside my door. Truthfully, I don't like it when we don't have power because we also don't have water. But I'm also grateful to know that if one of those power lines does break, it's not going to start a fire.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess Erin, Darrell, any comments on that? I mean, it just seems like every year it just gets worse. And, hopefully, next year it's not worse than this year because this year is pretty bad. I mean, I just
Yeah, I
don't.
know a couple of years ago we had, at the time, became the biggest fire in our history, just a few hours south of us in Ventura, the Thomas Fire. And we got a lot of evacuees from that. And I believe this year now, 5 of the current fires or 6 of the current fires are bigger than that. It's just, I mean, exploding. Climate change, poor forest management. I've heard everything, the drought, everything just being dry. It's just a perfect storm of bad conditions. And I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the dry. I mean, you guys were getting up over 100 degrees in some areas like a week or so ago, or maybe you are now, I guess, right? No?
Not quite that hot.
We did hear you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And it's just been windy too, and the wind plays into everything with the wildfires too, right?
Yes, yes. It's going to be in the 80s here. And again, and of course, it depends. If the winds come from the east, that's when Oregon gets threatened. They normally come from the west, but when they come from the east, that's what really caused the fires here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that and people doing gender reveal parties, which aren't good.
So I said common sense. I mean,
probably aren't good to spark to create sparks. I guess, what do you guys do for for campfires at your parks? So do you guys allow campfires, or are you mainly doing like gas?
So our campground is in city limits, so we're called the Inn Town Campground, and we are in town. And so when we built our campground, we were not allowed to have wood fires because of the air quality and the number of sites and our proximity to downtown. And so we have only had gas fires at our campground. COVID has required us to dismantle the communal fire pits, but we have been renting out individual gas fire pits all season long. We have currently still under a red flag warning, which is when the winds are up. So we have disabled our charcoal barbecue stands, which we only allow our campers to do in designated areas. We are a forested campground. And so there's the whole forest all around it. So there's lots of opportunities for bad behavior. But I think one of the differences between the conversation of private campgrounds and fire safety is that obviously we're developed and we have staff and we have it's all contained, whereas I think a lot of the issues that we've had in the past or still going on are dispersed camping, or they closed all the national forests in our part of the state during the fire because of the risks and the evacuation and the inability to man common sense in the trees. So I do feel fortunate that we are able to continue to provide gas fires, which we have all along, and that we can manage them in a safe way at our campground.
Yeah, I guess, Darrell, what's that like at your park? Do you guys allow the campfires, or do you do gas fires? What's that like?
We are an entirely different environment than that. We're not forested like that. We are, beachfront. We don't have a lot of vegetation going on. We do have a concrete fire ring at every site. All 400 sites have one. And we do allow fires, yes. Okay.
So I guess when you guys are monitoring these, monitoring the fires, do you guys go around and just make sure? I imagine Erin, with the gas fire pits, they can't get too big, can they? I guess how big of a fire can they get going in one of those things?
Yeah, you can turn them up or down, but there's no bonfires being had in a gas fire pit.
Yeah. I've seen some really big fires that some of these campers create. I know I've seen some videos of some really large ones that are like, wow, I don't think you should have one. I think I saw one a few weeks ago that was like right next to a building. And it's like, wow, that's a really big campfire to be having right next to a building. So I guess, Julie, at your parks, do they have the campfire rings?
They do have them at Yosemite Pines, and they were and they're really kept abreast of what's going on by the sheriff's department. They have great communications, and that's one of the things we try to let people know is that we are very well informed at both parks, actually, by the sheriff's department. So they did have to limit the fires to charcoal and propane at the campsites. And at Loon Lake, they actually called everybody ahead of time and said, that's not nearly as, there's about 90 sites there, I think, and they called everybody, and they were full. They were very, very full. It was a very, very good season for Loon Lake, the best they've had in about 3 years. And they did call everybody. However, the manager told me that she lives off site. She got a call from someone driving by and said there's someone at the park that has a fire. And she literally had to go at 9 o'clock at night to the camp and say, you got to put the fire out. And they, their response was, well, our children really wanted a campfire. We're camping. You got to put the fire out. So again, I think it's a matter of common sense. Somehow we have to get that message out to people. Because some of these fires were human started, obviously. It wasn't all electrical fires.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are human error. I mean, and it always surprises me how small of a spark can start one of these massive fires. It can be like, I think last year there was somebody that had a breakdown on the side of the road and created some sparks and started a wildfire. And like they had the gender reveal one this year that I don't know if that one's still burning. Obviously that one was human error. And then you get the arson where people are just setting them on purpose. But, it can just be like a really small spark. And I think that's something that, like out here in the Midwest or out East, we don't really think about too much. Because we this year it's been pretty wet, so we've been getting quite a bit of rain, and it's just not that something that we think about every day, but it's just always interesting to read about. And I guess we talked a little bit about the cancellations. I know on the review side of this is another matter too. I guess what has been the reviews you've been getting from campers? Have you gotten any like ridiculous reviews as far as, I mean, I imagine you get them all the time anyways, but I guess what's the reviews been like during this wildfire season?
I wish I had words. We do respond to every review. I do encourage other campground owners to definitely read it. It's highly valuable retail, but we have definitely responded to all of the 1-star reviews. I think that it's challenging as a small business owner to do everything that we have promised. Like, once again, since we reopened post-COVID, we have not closed. We have not been forced to be evacuated. We have honored all of our reservations. And so therefore we're honoring our cancellation policy. And so I wish I could say this in a tactful way, but the harassment and bullying and mean, horrible humans are pretty terrible. And it's not an isolated incident. I wish I could say it's, occasionally a telephone call or two. But I mean, there was one evening we just stopped answering the phone because my staff could not handle the additional harassment. So it's been bad. I think that one of the words that we have been using on responses to terrible reviews has been that the person asking for special treatment is discrimination, and we have a zero tolerance for that. And so we are treating everyone equally, and we care, obviously, and we would like to be empathetic, but the reality is if we give you special treatment and you special treatment, I mean, it's hard enough as it is. So I say for another campground owner who is getting the short end of the stick, you are not alone. And you can certainly steal the responses from our Yelp reviews. I have no problem with that plagiarism.
Good. I think probably the review that was, our agency responds to the reviews. The one that was most annoying was the person who wrote a review last week, because she was there at Loon Lake Lodge, standing in the lodge, asked the person what the weather and air quality was like. She was there, and it was right in the very beginning of the fire season. And she said, we really haven't had much smoke, and the smoke that has been coming down is probably from a fire in Washington. Well, it got very, very bad that day. All of a sudden, this fire started in Oregon, and it got very bad. And she wrote a terrible review saying that the staff had lied to her. and that we were very greedy, and they refunded. She had been in the cabin, they charged her for one night and then refunded 4 nights to her. And that was the very bad review, and that it was ultimate greed is what the response was. So it's very difficult sometimes to help people to understand. Like you said, everybody has to be treated equally. And the same thing, I know that at Yosemite, they have had a lot of difficulty. Of course, many people, international travel, it's Yosemite, and they've had to cancel. Everybody from, of course, Europe is canceled. So that's their base for cancellations. And they won't be, international travel is not going to resume for a long time. So that's the base where they start with the problems.
Yeah. I guess, Darrell, what's it like at your park? I know, do you see a lot of review incidents, I guess?
Really not bad. We haven't been, like I said, as impacted by the fires themselves. We have had, more COVID-related issues before the fires. People just being unreasonable with their expectations of our facilities modifications. And, a lot of that is stuff beyond our control. That's state mandated or county mandated or city mandated. And, we get the occasional bad one on there that's just obviously ridiculous. And I think people read them and just chuckle and take them with a grain of salt. But then you scroll through the rest of the Facebook posts, and it's just, heaping amounts of praise on the staff for how we're dealing with a really bad situation. And I think that just buries those bad ones really quickly.
Yeah. I guess, how do you, through all of this, I know there's, evacuations could come into play depending on your area, and then you have the poor smoke quality. How do you guys prepare your staff to tackle all of these issues? What's the process like for training your staff members as far as being able to deal with the customer service? And then, if you do have to evacuate, is there specific training you guys do to help the staff know what to do when they have to evacuate?
I mean, we have certainly had policies and procedures in place. I feel like the CampCalNOW emergency training seminars that I've taken have been great. And I think the best takeaway in a short tidbit is, make the person on site the person in charge. So like, if I can't be there, delegate that responsibility to the person who's there who can handle the situation. When our town was having evacuees stay with us, I had a customer ask, she said, there were guests who were uncomfortable staying and chose to leave. And one gal came up to me and she said, my neighbors are packing up and leaving. Are you asking us to leave? And I said, no, we're here. We feel comfortable with where the evacuation zones are, and we're following all of the updates from the Cal Fire. And if we ask you to leave, we're telling you to leave. And she said, that's great. I understand that. And that she felt more comfortable knowing that the protocol in place and the means to communicate was in place. So I think sometimes you do have to communicate to the customers what are the scenarios for what if, and to keep them informed. But the staff, obviously we don't have a very large staff, but it's been a process. I feel like this week's training has been the how to start the generator in case the power goes out. So that's.
Yeah. So I guess, being able to delegate that authority, I guess you have to have a lot of confidence in your employees to be able to be like, well, when I'm gone, you're in charge, and I feel confident that you know what to do, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
They're very fortunate at Yosemite Pines that they've got a staff that's been with them for a front desk staff that's been with them for several years. I don't know what they do for training, truthfully, because we're not there on site, but I know that there was a lot of praise on the review sites of how well the evacuation was handled. And so I guess, and as I said, they also had to take care of the animals. So they're obviously doing some kind of training, and they have some good awareness of what to do in those situations. They're a very solid staff. Everybody knows everything there. They have great communications amongst the staff, so it works well.
Have any of you guys had staffing issues? Darrell, have you had any staffing issues at your park this year just due to the COVID crisis?
Yes, definitely. All departments, every, front desk, our retail stores actually closed, our maintenance crew, across the board we have, yes.
Yeah, we too, we lost about half our staff at both of our businesses. I keep trying to explain to my friends that I haven't taken a day off in 6 months, and they don't quite understand that I'm not actually exaggerating. I literally have worked every day for the last 6 months. And I did mention before we started this that as a result of some of these staffing issues, we are going to change our season for the campground this winter because of it's been a lot, and we don't have the depth that we needed, and so we're just going to make some changes for our own mental well-being.
Do you anticipate being able to get those employees back down the road? Or I guess, I've talked with a lot of businesses that have had COVID related issues, and they talk about being down. And I guess I'm just wondering, if you anticipate being able to rehire those, or whether it's just going to be a difficulty moving forward.
The staff that they have at both of the parks are, especially at Loon Lake, because they are closed for the winter, it's a new staff. I'm talking about housekeeping, maintenance, etc. They have a new staff every year. They're workers, they're camp workers that come in. It's been very difficult this year. Yosemite, they had quite a few people there ready to go, and some of them left because they knew they could go other places to work. Tuolumne County is very, very strict with the COVID, and that they have to vacate each cabin one day before and one day after for cleaning. So even though they've had a smaller staff, they've had a lot of extra work to do every time there's a reservation. So no, they won't. The front office is fine, but the other they have to rehire every year, and they've had to hire mid-season for at both parks.
All right. Yeah, I've read a little bit about Erin, your park, Darrell, your park. I guess, are your parks destination parks, or are people coming to do other things in the area? And do wildfires impact, I know wildfires are impacting the national park land and the forest land. Does that impact tourists' desire to want to come out and see some of these beautiful areas once they've been burnt by a wildfire, I guess?
So I can speak on that. Our campground in the land of normal is obviously it's a destination in itself, but then people come and participate in all these amazing events and concerts and family gatherings and weddings and all the things that COVID canceled. So they're still camping and using camping as their activity. Our community has been thankful not to have any actual wildfires here. So our natural forested habitat is still forested, but the wildfires are impacting the air quality. So are you going to go for a hike at the river and go swimming when the air index is 150? And you're like, maybe. It depends on how badly you want to get outside. It's the air quality that's the problem, not necessarily that our landscape is burnt.
Okay. All right. Darrell, I guess, what about you? You're right on the beach, so they're probably coming to swim, right?
Well, the water's a little chilly. It's about 55, 56 in the ocean, so it's not like a Southern California beach or some of the East Coast, the Carolinas where I've been. But still, it's a beautiful area, and we are, in a lot of cases, an escape from all of that other stuff going on in the other areas. We're clean air, we're urban. We have restaurants that are open to serve. We really are definitely a vacation destination, and they're just going to keep coming. I don't see any demand reducing for us.
So are you guys afraid that, we've had these back-to-back wildfire seasons. Are you, afraid that maybe the travelers won't come down the road because they're like, oh, this is a bad time to go to California because it's smoky or, do you feel like the people just want to go to California and you guys offer some great outdoor settings for these RVers to go to?
I think you forget how many people live in California. So like we would be just fine if we served only Californians.
Okay.
Yeah, I and especially because they're near Yosemite, people are going to come to Yosemite Pines for just because they want to go to Yosemite. And the same thing, I think at Loon Lake, the lake is so gorgeous and it's a really fun place to go that I think that people will travel there just for the recreation. And it would be horrible if there was a fire around the lake. But I think people would still come.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's just interesting to see all of these wildfires and all the land that they're burning. How fast? I'm not from California, obviously. How fast does the forest recover? I guess from stuff like that. Erin, you've lived there a long time. I guess how fast does some of this land recover?
Yeah, that's not my area of expertise, but I definitely feel like it's so common. I feel like now to be like, oh yeah, remember that it burned. Like I don't know. They're still, you can still go outside even if that's not a good answer. Never mind.
I was surprised at I was reading about the wine country and the Napa Valley and stuff, and they were saying that the smoke actually like impacts the wine, which, I had never thought about. I guess it impacts like the oxygen from the grapes. And I was reading where they're going to have to like some of these wine companies aren't going to be using the grapes at all from this year because of the smoke, I guess. It was kind of fascinating, I guess. So,
And the ash is also, in fact, the produce here has been impacted because of the ash on the produce. So, you can't. It's toxic. Think of what's burning. It's not just trees. It's cars and buildings, and so the ash that just blows for miles and miles, and that impacts all of the agriculture also.
Yeah.
I think a good thing to share for the people who don't live in the community of the western part of the country is that, you could watch the news highlight of like everything is burning. And yet like our life is pretty much the same. Like that's the thing that's crazy. Even when there was a fire in our community, it wasn't actually that, like people were at our campground at the pool recreating, and then I have completely panic-stricken people who are evacuating who live 10 miles away. So like there's the land of reality and people's willingness to just pretend. I don't know, it's both. I would say it's not doomsday in the sense that like you can't go anywhere. I just think that the customers need to be aware that the variability of air quality, and like you can't plan for wildfire, and then you can't plan for which way the wind's going to blow and the smoke's going to blow, and being aware of your surroundings and knowing the evacuation zones and understanding where you can find up-to-date information is probably the best thing we can do to educate the consumers. And then as the campground owners, we just have to be consistent, because like it's so hard. And that if we're, if one park is giving into all of those bullying people and the other one, that it's just difficult. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of education, especially for people who don't live in those western states that are impacted by wildfires. Because, I think some people are just like, well, why don't they just dump a bunch of water on the wildfires and get rid of them? But these are massive blazes that take a lot more than water to put out. I guess. So yeah, there is definitely an education part for people who don't live out there.
So let me show you. So there we go. This is where I live. And so this is what there's the forest, there's the undergrowth. It's not just these two trees behind me are 300 years old. It's not a matter of, oh, let's go dump a bunch of water. I mean, there's lots of trees. People say, you get so much rain there, how can you have a drought? We have a lot of trees to water. And so, yeah, we have a drought. But like Erin said, there's also, this fire was 30 miles from us. However, it didn't really, fortunately, it didn't impact us. It didn't, and the Eugene is very much like this. The whole city is surrounded by forests, like I just showed you. Yet we are 1.5 miles from Walmart. So it's again, I have to go right back to people, common sense. There's been a lot of people who have complained the pool was closed. You didn't tell us the deli was closed. It wasn't on the website. Of course it's on the website. Take a good look at the website before you travel, and you can come and you can have a great time, because there's lots of other things to do besides go to Yosemite or go to Loon Lake. You're on the Oregon coast. You can drive to the coast. Just like Darrell. I mean, once you leave our mountainside, it's like Darrell's property.
Yeah, and depending on which way the wind blows, your parks clear up pretty quickly. Like, Darrell, I guess your park's back at green, I guess. So you were bad, and now you're doing great again. So that's great, and hopefully it doesn't get worse again. So
Yeah.
But so there's still a lot to do in California, even with the wildfires, I guess, is what you guys are saying.
I feel like we're in a holding pattern. I mean, I feel for those amazing firefighters and the resources that have been out there for the last month, but we're not out of the woods, if you want to call that. The campfire, which was in Paradise, which is not that far as the crow flies from here, that happened in November of, so like, this is the part where it's I think we got to just take a deep breath when we can, and the air is good, and plan for what we can plan for, and educate the customers that if we're open, we're open, and if the air quality is bad, that is your choice if you choose to come or not come.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any way, like, we don't hear of a lot of private campgrounds that are impacted by these directly by, them coming through. I think a couple years ago, Ventura KOA had a portion of their campground destroyed by a wildfire. But I guess, is there any way for, like, to prevent wildfires, like, protect the park a little bit, or is that kind of not really possible?
I mean, I think about our 15 acres of forested, even though we are in city limits, our property in previous ownership was BLM land. So there's a lot of really amazing large old growth trees. And we have a very large budget for tree maintenance. So, like, obviously it's all the under canopy is maintained. All of the trees are limbed up. Every year we take out the trees that are dead. And so we understand how to maintain the health of our forest. Obviously, it's in the best interest of our campground. But yeah, there are a lot of things that owners, private owners or house owners or anyone can do. But and I mean, there are these communities where the fires come in and they spread so quickly. So, like, in that situation, like, what are you going to do? I mean, the fact that I have fire hydrants around my campground doesn't change that. So.
Yosemite Pines is also within the city limits of Groveland. They have 75 acres. So, and it's the same kind of thing. You're right, Erin. They just have maintenance where they know they have to get the grasses cut down, and they have to, then it grows back. So then they have to go. I mean, they become obviously very tall grasses very, very quickly. Once, you know how it is in California, but then it stops and turns brown, and so. I just think that those two resorts do a very good job of serving their clients. I think that they have a very, very caring staff. You're right. I know that the managers have gone the entire summer with not one day off, trying to meet the needs. And I'm hoping that people hear that and convey and there's a lot of people, true, you know, we talk about people who complain, but there's a lot of people who have brought flowers and wine and candy and kind of things to the staff saying, you've been wonderful and thank you so much. So it's also very, very wonderful that there's so many people who do exactly what they should be doing. Erin, do you have people, and Darrell, do you have people who come and then leave once they get there because of the have you experienced that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had people who had, you know, issues with concern over fires, and then I've had people who have reactions to smoke, or like they gave it their best go, they decided they wanted to come, and then they decided they wanted to leave, and those ones have actually been less problematic than the ones who argued with you the day after they were supposed to arrive, or the ones who didn't come and then did a charge back to the credit card company for fraud. So yeah, people have chosen to leave, and that's their choice, and obviously that happens even outside of the wildfire season though, like, you know, it's too hot or it's cold or the kid didn't sleep or the dog is sick. I mean, there are so many reasons why people's plans change. But yeah, the air quality has definitely has impacted people's travel plans, and I applaud those who give it a go and then decide that they enjoyed it. I had a couple that was with us for a week, and they were like, our friends all think we're crazy, but they're like, it's horrible at home, so might as well stay in our RV and get out and change the scenery. So
yeah, so yeah. I guess, Darrell, on your end, you know, you're past president of CampCalNOW. Do you have any just insight into what CampCalNOW does as far as working with like the state government officials as far as on the wildfire front? Does CampCalNOW do anything as far as advocating for more prevention of these wildfires?
Well, this year it's been a lot of time occupied with COVID-related situations.
Yeah.
Wildfire stuff has not really come up a lot. It's so regional. You know, every park is different. Obviously, we have, like Erin mentioned, there's been some disaster preparation stuff we've been involved in, and that's just at the park level. You know, what parks can do to prepare. You know, that's probably something that we will be discussing in the very near future, since this is an escalating situation that is obviously going to be something we're going to need to dive into, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it must be difficult as an association because it is so spread out. You know, just trying to keep track of everything in all these different areas and trying to keep track of all your member parks and getting updates on how they're faring, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're a huge state. You know, I mean, our park is 5 hours from Mexico and 10 hours from Oregon. That just gives you an idea. You know, it's 15 hours from end to end or more. That's if you're hitting, you know, lead footing it. It's a big state. There's a lot of ground to cover. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just the wildfires just, I mean, on top of the COVID thing, it's just been quite a year. So I imagine you guys are all ready to move into 2021 and hoping that maybe it improves.
Definitely looking for some improvement. Yeah.
So okay.
One thing I would throw out is, you know, everybody's focusing on the fires right now. What's going to come in a few months, though, when the rain starts, is going to be mudslides next. And that's something that parks and the travelers need to be prepared for next. Is, you know, what roads are going to be closed? Is, you know, is all that mud going to come rolling down into my park? How are my customers going to get to me if you know, Highway 123 gets shut down? That's the next thing that I think everybody needs to be thinking about.
And here, the other thing that happened that is at Loon Lake, we had 2 years ago, we had a terrible, terrible ice storm. And the BLM campground has been closed for 2 years because they had such damage from the ice storm. So who knows what is going to be weather related next that's going to impact us. And you know, we have no control. We can only be prepared.
Yeah, I guess, and the power outages too. So are they still doing the rolling power outages even not during fire season, or what's that like, I guess, in California?
So in our area, we have two different types of power outages. We had earlier this summer, we had the grid is overtaxed. It's too hot. Everyone needs to turn off their air conditioners. And because we can't handle the load, we'll just turn them off for you, which is one version of a power outage. And then at the moment they have if there's a wind event and we're concerned, we will preemptively turn the power off and hope that doesn't spark a wildfire, which causes all sorts of other issues. And anyway, so yeah, those are a reality. Last fall, our businesses were impacted by the PSPS 5 separate times. I can tell you that is the uncertainty was detrimental to our businesses. In addition to a campground, as I said earlier, we also own a motel, and it was so difficult. So we've only yet experienced one power outage so far this year. I don't know how to plan for that. A generator is not going to power 15 electric heaters / air conditioners. Like, it's just cost prohibitive for that particular style of anyways. So I don't know. How's that for an answer?
Do you have notices, text from the power company, texts, and you receive them? And this just popped into my head. I'm wondering if that's something, because they were very, very good here sending texts and also rolling bars across the TV, etc. I'm wondering if that's something that we could offer to our guests that sign up for these texts and warning systems that we have here in our area, so that those people would also receive them as we're receiving them.
Yeah. I mean, you can, and the PG&E PSPS, they do give you notice. So for the one we had earlier this month, we just notified all of our customers that were incoming if they wanted to change their plans before they arrived. And I really, really appreciated the lovely gal who was like, it will be cooler there, the air is better, and I will bring my battery operated fan, I'm coming. It's like, okay. So it's good to give people choices. I did have the gal who did ask if, when we were having people evacuated or people were leaving our campground, if we were being evacuated. And I said, no. She took it upon herself to sign up for the code alerts from our county while she was visiting the area, so that she herself could get the notification on her phone. So being proactive as a customer is a great option. I think that for safety reasons is probably something that we're going to have to adapt to, and that way we get the extreme weather alert or the evacuation alerts, regardless if we live in the area.
Yeah, definitely. Darrell, have you been impacted by any power outages?
We haven't really, not those types. We've just had the normal, some idiot runs into a power pole and, power goes out in the park for a little while and everybody's yelling and screaming at us because we still have power in the office on a generator. We haven't had the other ones. We've had warnings, but they haven't impacted us, thankfully.
Yeah. So, and the state's working on, are these power companies like working on upgrading their power systems to be able to handle like the extra loads and the wildfire wind issues?
They are, but the systems are so antiquated that, and when we have the ice storms here, which are as detrimental in lots of ways, they do come out, they do routine trimming of the trees, which always truthfully breaks my heart to watch it happen, but they do come out and remove the limbs as much, frequently as they grow over the power lines. So they are, and they bring in crews from wherever they need to bring them in because when we have these ice storms, it takes many, many days to get the systems back up again because there's so much power lines, so many power lines down. At Yosemite, one of the things I have to also mention is that they do have a very large generator for the office area. And the day of the evacuation, they had just got their shipment of ice cream and ice, large shipment. There's 200 sites there. And they left and the generator never came on. So they came back to a huge melt of ice cream and ice. Wow. And that kind of thing, of course, all had to be cleaned up before they could have people back in the park.
So So I guess just to wrap things up, I guess, is there any silver lining to this year? I mean, we've had COVID and the wildfire. I guess what's the silver lining for you guys? Is there, I mean, the increased interest in the RV park and campground sector has just been amazing. I know I've heard a lot of owners. Is that a silver lining for you guys, I guess?
Yes, Loon Lake also, because the other thing that they were fighting was that because the BLM closed, they made the announcement that the entire lake was closed. And so for 2 years, Loon Lake has had to say the lake is not closed, the lodge is open. But there was a lot of people who canceled because of that false information put out by the BLM. And this year it's really been quite wonderful because the people somehow figured out that the lake was open and they were full. They're still very full beyond normal. People are still coming to Loon Lake. Yosemite was although even at 50% capacity, they were full for the entire summer because of the people wanting to travel close by.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the silver lining. It's really amazing to be able to provide people a place to go outside and for them to be part of their, like, just take some time for themselves or for that time for their family. And we have had a lot of happy customers and a lot of happy children. I mean, having kids myself and knowing how unfun distance learning is, like, it's great to be able to provide people, I mean, safe is not a word choice I use in my marketing, but a place for them to go outside and enjoy themselves in an environment. So that's an always every year, but I feel like this year has been an even greater one to have that as a way. And because we get so many people from the city, it's been nice to have a lot of people who are really responsible in the land of COVID precautions. So that's kind of been nice to see and interact with people who are taking things as seriously as we need them to be taking them. So.
Yeah. And Darrell, I guess for you, how's the, is there a silver lining? I imagine your park's been pretty packed this summer, hasn't it? Or
we saw the busiest August we've had that I can remember. Normally about mid-August, with schools going back normally into session, we start seeing a drop off. And we did not lose a single site night this year. We stayed busy all the way through August and every night in September. Basically, we've been just about sold out. We are seeing an interesting thing where people are needing, a half hour to 45 minutes to an hour of a late checkout because their kids are still in class. That's something we hadn't anticipated seeing. So we've had to try to be flexible on that as best we can. And because I guess some of the kids, if you drop out a half hour early, you lose credit for being on that session. And so we try to be, flexible with that. But silver lining wise, we're making reservations all day long for not just new customers to us, but new customers to the industry. These people are going out and buying their first RV ever. And, it's miraculous how many people are doing that. They've never even rented one before, and they're just going to go buy an RV and they're hitting the road. So I think for our industry, it's a really, really good sign for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been it's been a weird year because we had the COVID and everything stopped, and then especially in the RV park and campground sectors, once it got going again, it just took off. And I know the RV industry has just been doing about as good as they can right now. I mean, the manufacturers are they can't keep up with orders, and they've got good backlogs, and so it's just been amazing to see. And to see how the industry's kind of rebounded there. But, it's been a wild year on the natural side too, with the wildfires and then the hurricanes. And it's just been a crazy year on that front too. So hopefully things settle down, and 2021 is just a really good year for everyone. And, the wildfires don't impact us as much in 2021, hopefully. So, but it's been great talking with all of you guys. I'll let you guys get back to work. I know you guys probably got busy schedules ahead, so I don't want to keep you guys for any longer. But thanks for coming on and for just talking a little bit about what you guys are experiencing.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah.
Ben.
And thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.